Okay. Kumla Black Gemara. This is Sunday's Gemara, the Kuf Ayin Gimel. We're going to bring now another brisa that argues with what we said before. This is like a third opinion. Tanya, this that we learned, just like they can go ahead, two Yosef and Shimons, they can go ahead and they can ask for money from other people. So too, they could lend to each other. We said clearly before that the two cannot lend to each other because each one can say, you're the I was the lender. Almost say, I was the lender, and you paid me back, so I gave you back your stock. And we don't know who to trust. This Bryce said you could, but how can it work? The Mike and Miflige, what's going on here? Well, how can this Bryce say it's all right? Because we're talking about here the case in Star with labor. Till now, we assumed that a borrower can engage a safer to write a star that I owe money to someone. Because he's the only one who's taking any risk is the borrower himself. If he drops the star and the Malva finds it, the Malva can collect. So if he's prepared to take that risk, go with it. So you can write a star to Leiva, Alpha Pisha Malvi, but Malva not with him. And that here is an argument. Come Miflagi. Tana Didon Sava, our Tana holds, Koisvin star Leiva, you do write a star Leiva, Alpha Pisha Malvi, even though the Malva is not there. So Zimnin sometimes. The other the Gabi Safa, very interesting. So now remember the two Yosef and Shimons. So the Yosef and Shimon, the Yosef and Shimon, our Mishnah is very suspicious of what this is what happened. The Yosef and Shimon Ariganto Sefer says, write Mishnah that I will borrow money from the other Yosef and Shimon. The Sadi Vamalo Kisru Lishra, write Mishnah to be in the Lemezim Yosef Shimon Haveli. I'm going to borrow money from Yosef Shimon, my friend, write Mishnah that I owe $100. That Yosef and Shimon lent $100 to Yosef and Shimon. But then, after it's written and signed, Nikitale, he went to a Bezdin, this guy, this conniving labor. He actually wasn't, he went to Bezdin, see, I lent money to the other Yosef Mishimon. It says that Yosef Mishimon lent money to Mishimon, and here, I'm the lender, I'm holding the star. Therefore, our Mishnah says, because we're allowed to write a star without the lender being present, we can, they're both of the same name, we can cause all kinds of trouble. However, Tana Bra, some of the bright souls, we do not write such a star, so there's no reason to be concerned, and that's why Yosef and Shimon can lend money to other Shimon. Because we'll assume whoever is holding on to the star, they're the real lender. If the other guy was the lender, he wouldn't have given you back the star; he would have ripped it up. For this very reason. We just said before that if he found among your documents a star that a lender lent to both Yosef and Shimon, and one of them says it was paid up, you can no longer collect any money because we don't know which Yosef and Shimon paid you back. So at the time, the only reason it seems to me is the nimtza, because you found this document. But it seems to me, let's say you didn't find this document that they're paid up. You have two stars of Yosef and Shimon, Mati Mekik. That you could go ahead, Mapik, you can go ahead and take money out. The question is, didn't we learn? We learned before that you cannot lend money to Yosef and Shimon because you don't know which Yosef and Shimon it is. And each one will always say, it's the other one. It's not me, it's the other person. So how come it says over here that you could lend money as a Shimon, and only because it says in the document it's paid up, you cannot collect? Rabbi Meir said, we're talking about over here that you could identify each Yosef and Shimon because they had different Zaydas, different grandfathers' names, and they wrote down their grandfather's name as well. So the obvious question is, so then when there's a receipt, you know exactly which Yosef and Shimon is the one who paid up. What do you mean we don't know who paid? Look at the Zayda's name. The next is Tabra Bishmar the man so let's look at the receipt whose name it is. We're talking about a case on the loan document, it had 3 generations. But the aim it came to receipt, they forgot to put the 3rd generation. It says Yosef Mishimon. It doesn't say who the Zayd is, and now we don't know which one paid up. And that's why he cannot collect from either one. Abaye says, we're talking about it here. You understood that we found it in the house of the lender. No, we're talking about here that we found it in the house of the borrower. What happened was the borrower borrowed money from 2 different Yosef and Shimons. And then on one of the loans, it said that he paid it up. And the question is, he still owes money to one of them. He doesn't know which one. This is what's shot. Not that we found in possession of the lender and the borrower. And the star of Yesem Shimon, like Perua. Sorry, found the Yesem Shimon. So in this case over here, since there's a receipt that says clearly he paid back Yesem Shimon, and now we don't know which one he owes the money to. And the rule is that since they're the Meitzah Chaveri, they want to take money from him. They have to prove, the onus of proof is on them that I was not the one that was paid back. The other Yesem should pay back. You still owe me the money. Because Yad Shtar al HaTachtoina. Each they have to prove which one it is. Unless these two lenders make a deal between them, let's go together. I give you permission that if you're the one who's still owed that if I'm the one who owed the money, I'm giving permission that you can collect it. And the other one says the same thing to this guy. And together they go. Between the two of them, you still owe money to one of them. And then they get the money and they divide it accordingly. Says the Gemara, what happens? It says, if it says that the shtar rois in plural were paid up, then shnei and purim. Then we assume that everything was paid up and he cannot collect it all. Says the Gemara, case of the Yasu Yishalation, what do you do? You go back a third generation. What happened to both Kainim? Then Yichtavudoy, go back a fourth generation. You think you think that Kain will be a first option, third generation, go back another generation is another option, and the last one would be about some money, the tall one, the short one, and yet the Mishnah has the order a little bit differently. Then the Mishnah, next Mishnah. The guy says to his son, he's in and he is dying, so he's now dictating before his death. I have a star amongst my starters, and it's paid up. The loan there, it's been paid up. The ain the yedeya, and I don't know. Ezehu, I don't know which star it is. I know one that was paid up. I just don't know which one it is. And no, but he's saying that people owe me money, and there was one borrower that paid me back. And I did not give him back the loan contract. He trusted me. I would never go back again and claim from him. But I can't remember what it is. So the din is that storage pulling Peruin, then all that we assume that all the contracts they've been paid up and the children cannot collect any money from anybody because we don't know which star it is, unless we know definitely that it wasn't included. He said one contract is paid up, we don't know which one it is. So then, but the one person you made two loans, and since only one loan was paid up, you know for sure he owes you another loan. And one was for $1,000 and one was for $100. So which one do we assume was paid up, and which one is still outstanding? So he says because we don't know, Hagadol will assume that the larger sum was paid off. The Hakotten ain't the Purun, the smaller wasn't, because again, says if he says the star that I have in my hand, it's been paid up, then we'll assume automatically, if he doesn't specify, that the larger amount was paid up. If he says that your debts has been paid up, no matter how many shtaras, we'll assume they're all, because he said there's no debt, as if he's saying there's no debt anymore, then all the shtaras have been cleansed, have been paid up. Based on this, if he says my field is sold to you, and we don't know which field it is, then you'll say the largest field is what's sold to you. But if he says if he says the field that belongs to me is sold to you, all the field you just said by the money, if he says the contract has been paid up, or the chayv has been paid up, as if all the chayv has been wiped clean. So the following logic, the field that by me is sold, that means all the fields were sold. Does that make sense? Gemara says, you're right. Yad balashtar. It's always the person who's trying to take something away from the other one has to prove. In the case of a debt, it's always the lender who needs to prove, because he's the one who's trying to extract the money. So therefore, if he says that the debt is clean, as if he cleaned all the debts, unless he can prove otherwise. When it comes to a field, it's the buyer is trying to take away the field. So therefore, the buyer has to prove that he sold him all the fields. Says the Gemara, and when it comes to a field, we don't know which field it is. We don't automatically say he sold him the biggest field, because you're the Maitzi, the buyer. You prove which field it is. We have the concept of a guarantor. It's called an Orev. And there are two kinds of guarantors. There's an ordinary Orev and there's an Orev Kabul. An Orev Kabul is somebody who accepts as if, as we'll see more later, he says, you know what, you give the money to the other person and I'll pay you back. You didn't say lend the money to the other person. A regular guarantor is Reuven and Shimon having a deal. Shimon wants to borrow money from Reuven, but Reuven is scared. He doesn't feel confident that Shimon will be able to pay him back. So you have Levi steps in as a guarantor. Levi is really extraneous to the whole deal. It's Reuven lending money to Shimon, but because he lent money to Shimon based on Shimon and Levi's guarantee, so therefore we say that Reuven is what do you call it? That Levi has to pay the debt if Shimon can't pay. A Kabbalin is very different. A Kabbalin, he says to Reuven, you know what? Give the money to Shimon, and I'll take care of you. Then it sounds like that Reuven is actually working on behalf of Levi. That as if Levi commissioned Reuven, lend money to Shimon, and I'll pay you out. I'll pay you back. So therefore, it's as if Reuven, either Reuven is acting on behalf of Levi, so he can go directly to Levi, or it's as if Reuven actually lent the money to Levi himself, because he's a Kabbalah, he took it upon himself. And we'll soon see the difference in the outcomes. And the difference will be what happens if Levi has money. Can you go directly to the guarantor, or do you first have to go to the borrower and see what you can take? Says the Mishnah. If you lend money through a guarantor, you put him in order, don't go to the order first. But the Mishnah doesn't say first. The Mishnah says don't go to the order. If you read the Mishnah properly, it sounds like you never go to the guarantor, which the Gemara will have a problem. But the Imam Alay, what happens? He made a special clause. Al menashe Ephraim and Misha Erze. If he says, I will collect money from who I want, then Yifram in a then he can collect money from the guarantor. In other words, if the lender says, okay, I'm going to lend money to Shimon, but I want to have the option of going to Shimon or going to the guarantor, then he can go to the guarantor. Now, are we talking about a case even if the borrower has plenty of funds and he can still go directly to the guarantor? We'll see the Gemara. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees. He says, the leiva has assets. Benkach or benkach. I don't care if you made this condition. I don't care if you did make a condition. You part him in Arav. You have no right to go to the guarantor. First, you go to the borrower directly. If somebody was a guarantor to make sure that the wedding will go ahead, and he says that to the woman, don't worry, I am a guarantor that your husband will pay you out if you get divorced. And now the husband is divorcing his wife, and the husband has no money, so the woman goes to the guarantor and says, hey, you promised that you're going to pay out my husband's ksuba, pay me out. The Mishnah says, Yadirena hano. Before this guarantor pays out, he says to the husband that you need to make a promise, that a kind of a promise that you can never unravel and that you can never cancel. That is a promise al das rabin. You make a promise that I'm making a promise on behalf of the public, of the Jewish community. That's a neder that can never be annulled. And therefore, why am I doing that? I'll never have any pleasure for my wife. Why are you saying that? Because they could be making a deal. Maybe the husband has no money, the poor. So they came up with a ruse. They'll get divorced. They'll go to this rich person who guaranteed the loan. He'll give the money to the wife, and then he'll remarry her, and they'll share the money. So the only way that we get the guarantor to pay is if he makes the husband swear he'll never have pleasure for his wife again. So there's no ruse here. Shema, maybe they'll make some kind of a deal arrangement on the asset. So Zevi should take it right back. Says about in my time, how does an Arav work? What's his commitment? Why is he responsible at all? He didn't get any money. All he does is say, I guarantee you. It's a verbal guarantee. Why should it work? Rabbi Rabbi, they both say, Gavra ashlimidli, Gavra ashlimalach. Or better yet, the question is also, before we get to that, why can't they go directly to the guarantor? He guaranteed the money. Why? The Mishnah seems to be saying that not only you cannot go directly to the guarantor, you cannot go to the guarantor at all. As if you can never go to the guarantor. So what was the point of the guarantee? And why can't you go to the guarantor? So Rabbi used to say, the guarantee was not if the person has the money, we'll reimburse you. The guarantee was that as long as if there's no borrower around, we'll step in. If the bar fled overseas, died, we'll step in. But if the bar is around, you go clap couple of It's your problem. You take care of it. That's what Rabbi Rebbe learned. Masker Nachman says, Hai Dina de Pasoi. This law that you just said is a Persian law, that you don't go at all to the guarantor. What are we talking about? Adrabah, Basar Arbazli. On the contrary, the Persians, they go directly to the guarantor. Even if the borrower has money, they totally bypass the borrower. They go straight to the security, to the guarantee, and go to the guarantor and say, pay up. Ella, this is what you mean. They dina de Pasoi. This law of Rabbi Yosef makes about as much sense as the Pasoim. They give no logic. Why is it if the borrower who borrowed the money and benefit from the money and has money to pay back, and yet you don't go to the borrower, you go straight to the guarantor? Does that make sense? Absolutely not. The same thing what you just said right now. That what? If I give a guarantee, it's only if the guy absconds or the guy dies. What if the guy is there, has no money to pay? What kind of guarantee is that? Of course it's guaranteed. Elam Nachman, you misunderstood the Mishnah. You know, like part of the Mishnah said you don't go to the guarantor. Don't go to him first. First, you go to the lender, borrower. The borrower doesn't have, then you go to the guarantor. Tanya we actually learned the Brayso. If you lend money only because based on the guarantee from a guarantor, do not go ahead. Don't go ahead to the guarantor first. But the imam, if he said, if he says, I will go to whichever one I want, the lender made a condition that he has the right to go whichever one, then Yitva Arav Chila, he's allowed to go then to the Arav first. He's allowed to go to the guarantor because he openly, expressly said that. And we'll soon see, are we talking about a case where the borrower has money and still you can bypass the borrower or not? How do we know Arav B'chlal? Can indebt themselves. It says, Reuben says that I want to bring Binyamin to Yosef, and I guarantee it. And for me, you will seek recompense. He tells Yaakov. So we see that an Arav can commit themselves with words. All this is words. This is not an Arav. This is much more than that. This is like a kabbalah, because he said he said I will take Binyamin. So he was accepting upon himself the full responsibility. How do I know? The Chsiv says, what did Yehuda say? Give me Binyamin and I will return him. So therefore, and to know, give is the expression that an Arav Kablan gives. And because Yehuda said it right after Reuben, it sounds like they were saying the same thing, even though Reuben didn't use the same words. It sounds like they were saying the same thing. So this is an Arav Kablan. Arav Kablan is very different than Arav. Arav Kablan is tantamount to you're giving directly to the guarantor, as if you're lending the money to him and he's passing it on. Or more so, is the lender is acting on behalf of this guarantor, as if he's a shliach of the guarantor. What does that have to do with a regular kind of a guarantor, which is not involved at all? It just says, look, if, I'm here in case you don't get paid. From here, it says in the pasuk, if somebody look out big day, take away his shirt, he orev zor, because this guy went ahead and guaranteed some stranger. For a stranger, go ahead and take away his security. It says, B'ni, my son, if you did become a guarantor for your friend, you stretch out your hand for a stranger, you basically stumbled by the words of your mouth. You became now strangled or seized by the words of your mouth. And I say, this is what you have to do, my son. The hinotza, you will be saved. You will open up your hand and pay out, and go ahead and appease your friend. And this is how we interpret the pasuk. Im mammon yeshloi biyadcha heter pieces yad. If you owe the guy money, you're a guarantor. Open your hand and pay out. This is how we know that an Arav guarantor has to pay out. Im lav, and if you don't have hirba olav reim, why don't you send a bunch of friends to try to appease him and calm him down? So this is where we learn the concept of an Arav, whether it's Mahatayda or whether it's Omer Rabban, is a big machlekes Rishon. Arav de Mishtabed, the concept of an Arav is actually, I would say, an argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. We just had an argument between Rabbi Yossi, a smachta. If I say something, but I don't really intend it to happen, I don't expect it to happen. I tell you, we had it a short while ago. If you paid someone a partial loan and then the balance you give the star to another party, to a sholish, and the borrower it's past the due date, but the borrower says, "Don't worry." He says, "If I don't pay the balance of this debt within 30 days, you can take the star, present it again, and I'll pay the entire amount all over again." Now he never meant that because he was sure, he was confident that he would pay before. That's called a smach. And we had an argument. What happened was the 30 days expired and he didn't pay the rest. Does he now have to pay the full amount of the loan or not? So that the argument is Rabbi Yasi. Rabbi Yasi, the Amr Smachta Kanya says the Smachta is kind of, even though you never expect it to happen, the fact is that you said it, you're kind of. So the other the same thing. When you become a guarantor, do you anticipate that you're going to have to pay out? The borrower says, "Do me a favor, why don't you just countersign, become a guarantor? I promise you I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. I just need you. Otherwise, they won't lend me the money." So you have no intention really of ever paying that. It's only a smachta. So according to Rabbi Yasi that says a smachta kanya, then the whole concept of or makes sense. Mishtabit. Or Rabbi Yehuda that says a smachta like kanya, but according to Rabbi Yehuda that says that smachta doesn't work, then or the mishtabit, then the or doesn't work either. It doesn't make sense. Why does it make sense? We follow and practice the smachta lekanya. We say smachta is not kind of. That's why if you play cards and you get money, you're a ganef because a smachta is not kind of. Therefore, that person who put the money in doesn't think he'll lose it, and therefore you're stealing. And the or of mishtabed at the same time, we believe in the concept of a guarantor. But if you're saying that that it's a smachta, how can an or work? El Ravashi. Ravashi says, you know how or works? The only reason why Reuben lent money to Shimon is because the guarantor was there. That satisfaction that Shimon derives from the fact that you handed over money because of my credibility, he's happy to commit himself to this loan. So in other words, some learn, he received something and in lieu, he received pleasure. We know that a woman sometimes, if let's say if she gives money to the husband is a very prominent figure in the community, and she gets a satisfaction that he accepted her money, she received something. Satisfaction can have a value, and over here also, the guarantor has a satisfaction that you trust him to the extent that you're prepared to lend money based on his credibility. He received something, and in lieu of that, he's committing himself. The guy says, "Look, I want to have the option to go collect whatever I want." He can't. Says when do we say that you can go to the guarantor directly if he made this condition stipulation? The loiva has no assets. The loiva has assets. Then lo yiparminor. Even if you made this condition, you have no right to go to the guarantor. You got to first make a beeline to the borrower. So how can it be? The Mishnah clearly says, when the Tani is safe, it says in the Mishnah of Shimon Leimet, if there are assets to the borrower, lo yipaminor, don't go to the guarantor. Sounds like the Tanakama holds that even if there are assets to the borrower, you could go directly to the guarantor if he made this stipulation. So how come you, Rabba Babachon, says you cannot go to the guarantor if there's any funds left by the borrower? Because the Tanakama makes no difference. You're right, but you're wrong. Sudi Mechsa, the words missing in the Mishnah. The Hachik Tani, let's learn the Mishnah as follows. You lend money to your friend based on this guarantor. You have no right to go to the guarantor unless you first go to the borrower. But if he says, I want to go and I want to have the option to go to either one, you go, then if you want, you can go to the guarantor. But when is all this said? There's no asset to the labor. Don't go to the Arav. So before we go any further, it doesn't make sense then. So what did you gain by making the stipulation? Either way, let's say you made no stipulation. First you go to the borrower, no funds, you go to the guarantor. And if you did make the stipulation, I want to have the option, you still have to go to the borrower first, no funds, you go to the guarantor. So what did you achieve by the stipulation? So Ben Tom says the difference is as follows. In a normal case, you go to the borrower, he has no property. You go to the guarantor, the guarantor says, 1 second. Did you exhaustively search and see whether he has bank accounts, whether he has stocks, whether he has other investments? Before you come to me, you got to check him from top to bottom to see whether he has any investments, money in the bank, money under a pillow. Only if he's totally destitute, you come to me. However, where he made that option, then we say, first you go to the borrower, knowing properties that he has. But if he has no known properties, you don't have to do a forensic search. Then you can go directly to the guarantor. That's the difference. Says Aventam. Case number 3, the Kablon. But this Arab Kablon, you part of the Kablon. If he's a Kablon, he took it, he says, go and give him. Then you can go directly. Then you can go directly to the Arab with bypassing the borrower completely, even though the borrower has money. Now, Shimon Galil says, if the leiva has assets, even though this person is an Arab, Kaplan took it upon himself. He said, you go give him as if that person is acting as an agent, the lender is acting as an agent, the borrower, and the guarantor. And don't go, you don't, according to Shimon Galil, you don't go to the guarantor unless you see there's no funds by the borrower. Amar Rabbi Bachana concludes, whenever it says that Shimon Gil's opinion, the Mishnah, halacha k'mais, we always follow him. Chutz, the following three cases, we don't follow him. Arav. In the case of an Arav, we don't follow him. But if you have an Arav Kablan, you have every right to go directly to the Arav Kablan, and you can bypass the borrower, regardless of how wealthy the borrower is, number one. The Tzidon. In the case of Tzidon, where the husband said to the wife, I'm giving you a divorce on the condition that you give me back my shirt. And let's say she lost the shirt. There's an argument between the Chacham and Galil, can she give him the value of the shirt? And according to Hashem Galil, you can't, you have to give the shirt. According to Chachamim, you can't, you have to give the shirt itself because that was the condition. And otherwise, the get is not valid. According to Hashem Galil, you could give the value. There we don't follow Hashem Galil. And the third one is Raya Chorina. If the Bezin asked this person, you have any other evidence, proof to support your case? He says, no more. And then 2 days later, he brings witnesses. Do we accept that or not? Hashem Galil says you do, and we don't follow Hashem Galil.